Hello everybody, this is Danny from Deep South Homestead on Porch Time today. Guys, it's definitely hot. Ain't no doubt about that. Partly cloudy today, sunny and it's all get out, and then all of a sudden the clouds come in, so the camera will be going in and out of darkness just like it usually does, sitting over here on the porch. But guys, today I want to just talk about something that seems to be, I'm finding this to be a pretty big issue with lots of people who call themselves homesteaders. Everybody wants to live off their land, because that's where you hear that, or I hear that a lot. Everybody's talking about, man, I just want to be able to live off my land. Well, living off your land is not a grocery store. Now, we have to understand that. Back when Wanda and I was raising vegetables and selling vegetables, we were amazed at how many people would call us. Like, they would just call us and say, like in August, I would like to come by and pick up some green beans. And it just blew me away. I said, do you understand you can't get green beans in the South in August? And green beans are a cool weather crop. They last for about a month here, and that's about it. You buy them then. We're not a grocery store. We don't ship stuff in from everywhere. You want fresh produce, you got to buy in season. And that is probably one of the biggest issues that I found that most people in our climate just do not understand. Most everything here is very short-lived. It doesn't last for long periods of time. Our springs are very short. Our falls are very short. Our winters are very short. But our summers are very long. And they are very hot. And usually pretty dry. So that really limits us as to the amount of what we grow and how we grow it. Now, we have a very long growing season. I can grow outside here roughly 265 days a year. Now, I can grow outside that. But I'm limited as to what varieties and what types of things I can grow during that time. So many people in the spring, they jump the gun and they plant stuff at the wrong time, and then it gets cold and it stunts it. They don't understand why their stuff doesn't do well. You know, I hope that by showing here on our YouTube channel how our food grows, that we show you that it can be done and that it can produce abundantly. Now, we have failures, and when we do, I show you a failure and I tell you what happened. This year we had one massive failure, and that was the Grazon chemical getting put into our soil through the use of animal manure. I mean, I never dreamed that that would happen. I'm old school in a lot of ways, because I mean, when I grew up, we were responsible people when it come to our land. When we do hay, or especially, we pulled weeds, we cut weeds out of fields, any invasive weeds that is, and then we would bush hog the field, and when the next grass growed up, it was cut and baled. No problems whatsoever. You've seen beautiful fields of Bahia grass, or stuff, Bermuda grass and different things sitting out there. But now it's a totally different world. People look at weeds now as if they are the most horrible thing in the world. And some are. Don't get me wrong, some are. But the spraying of Grazon on grass fields made it easy for farmers not to have to worry about hiring teenagers to go out and cut weeds or anything like that. Insurances has made it impossible to put young people in fields, and half of the time young people won't even go out and work anymore. They get eat up with bugs, or they're afraid they might get bit by a spider, or you know, a thousand things. Our parents just threw us out there and told us, says, you know, fend or die. You know, basically is what it was. We didn't think about nothing like that. We rambled everywhere. We worked for people. Certain farmers would call and say, is your boys available to work? And my dad would say, yes they are. And he'd say, son, be up tomorrow morning at such and such a time, have your lunch ready, you go and work for Mr. So-and-so. He's going to come by and pick you up. And, you know, that's just the way it was. But we didn't have to worry about things like Grazon being sprayed on fields back then, because we worked for people who, we cleaned fields. But now we had the massive disaster here at Deep South Homestead. All the tomato plants just started curling up and twisting up and everything. I've since fixed the problem, found out what it was, fixed it. We are now, the huge compost pile that I had, we now have sunflowers planted on it, trying to, you know, absorb as much of the Grazon out of it, because all indication says that if you just leave the stuff piled up, it can last 10 years or more. Last indefinitely in the soil. You have to put a monocot type plant on it, whether it's just grass, corn, sunflowers, something like that. We use sunflowers because sunflowers are used to clean up a lot of nuclear disasters. So we figure if it cleans up that, surely it'll clean the Grazon out. But, you know, to clean the soil back up, and it may take a couple of years of doing that before we can get enough of that stuff pulled out of the soil to actually be able to say that our soil is viable to be used again. And I will have to do tests on it as I go along to make sure that we eventually have it all out. But guys, your homestead, you have to understand, is not a grocery store. So living off the land requires some amount of education and some amount of planning. You don't just, I guess this is another thing that people are not grasping the concept of, is you hear these people go, well, I've got my survival seeds bought up. If something happens, I'm going to plant my seeds, I'm going to grow my food. You can't just go out and stick a seed in the ground and grow your food. Okay, I don't know how else to say it. It just don't work like that. The soil has to be built up. You have to have certain nutritions in the soil. You have to have a certain type of soil. The pH of the soil's got to be right. The disease in the soil's got to be right. You know, I mean, there's so many variables to planting vegetables that you can't just, if an LCE happens, then you can't just go out and start sticking seeds in the soil and think you're going to grow your food, because on top of, not only that, it takes anywhere between 50 and 125 days just to grow the food and it produce. So you got to be able to survive that length of time, if it even produces. And then you got to have heirloom seeds, and you got to know that you can save your seeds if you haven't already bought up enough of them and stocked them back. And then you have to know the simple fact of companion planting. You can't plant some things close to other things. You can't interplant everything. Some things will cross-pollinate. Some things won't cross-pollinate. The things that does cross-pollinate could make your food taste horrible. I mean, didn't you lose all your seed because they cross-pollinated? You could plant the wrong trees on your property. Things like eucalyptuses, walnuts, all these type of things, they do not let anything grow around them. They put off a chemical in the soil that prevents anything from growing anywhere near them. And they become invasive eventually. And guys, there is so many variables. Me and Wanda was looking yesterday at 6 trees that you do not plant on your homestead, and we have 2 of them. I mean, one is a silver maple, you know, that we have. We have the mimosa tree as the other one. The ginkgo biloba, the female one. The sycamore was one of them. The elm tree was one of them. I mean, I went back and looked at them and I was just like, wow. We don't stop and think about the fact. You know, the mimosa, it does have medicinal values to it, the bark and everything on it. But the seeds are highly toxic. If a little kid was to eat the seeds, it would poison them. little animals eat the seeds, it would poison them. So I mean, you have to stop and think. The silver maple has an invasive root system. It just lays on top of the ground. The tree is extremely brittle. It can fall over on the house. We don't think about these kind of things on a homestead. When we think about a homestead, we think about our homestead just being a grocery store where we can just get what we want when we need. We can plant what we want when we want to. That's not true. People are constantly calling us, emailing us, I would like some sugar cane to plant. Sugar cane's one time a year deal. I talked about this in a video. You do it in the fall, that's it. You get a one-time shot. You either get it in the fall or you don't get it at all. It's very easy to grow, but the fact is, and it only grows in certain climates. So that's another thing that we have to understand, is what grows in our climates as far as being able to live off of our land. Because not all of us are going to be able to grow everything that we like to eat on our land. Now, there's lots of things here. I love almonds, but I don't have any almond trees here. I love pecans. I have 2 small pecan trees. They're just now starting to grow after 15 years. You know what I mean? So I mean, it takes time to have things. It takes time for things to happen. You know, I love to eat strawberries, but that doesn't mean that I can have strawberries year-round if I don't prepare to have strawberries year-round. I have to, whenever the season for strawberries down here in the spring, in the early summer, I have to have enough of them to harvest them and freeze them or put them up in preserves of some kind of way so that I can have strawberries for the rest of the year if I want them. We have to understand that. Lots of people ask us, man, why do y'all plant so much? Well, as you've probably heard in our other videos, if you've watched them, if you're not, then I'm going to tell you again, we plant some for the diseases, we plant some for the insects, some for wildlife, and some for us. Because all those things are going to happen to a garden. And if you don't have but just a few plants of something and a disease comes in and wipes it out, you're devastated. You don't have anything. You're going to starve. You know, or bugs hit and wipes it all out and you only got like just a few plants, you're going to starve. If deer come in or elk or whatever it comes on your property, comes in, they eat it, rabbits, you're going to starve if you don't have enough for everybody. So you've either got to build a system around it to prevent other animals from coming in, and you've got to keep some kind of pesticides on them or fungicides or something to keep viruses from happening, or you'll just starve. I mean, it's just going to be that way. This is one of the issues that we're facing with Agenda 2030. The Agenda 2030 has 17 parts to it that deals with just what I'm talking about. Sustainability off of the environment, the land. It supposedly is, you know, there's a lot of good things. It's what they're trying to say that it is. I mean, there's a lot of hidden agendas in Agenda 2030. But you can Google it, the 17 points to Agenda 30, and it's all about equality in the world. Everybody, gender equality, financial equality, health equality. You know, there's all kinds of things that goes along with it. No poverty in the world, all these kind of things. So that the world will have plenty of food and everything. And guys, unless we as individuals learn to be responsible and learn how to use the land that we possess to do the things that we want to do, then all of these agendas are null and void. They just do not mean a hill of beans, to be honest with you. You've got to be a responsible person when it comes to gardening if you want to have a garden that you can survive off of. You can't just go out there and take a bucket and put some dirt in it and think that you're going to grow everything that you need if you don't know what you're doing. First of all, they fixed it now where most all the manures you get in bags, whether it's black cow or any other manure that you get in a bag, you got to be so careful because now, because of things like 2,4-D weed killer, remedy, grazon, however you want to say, I get in trouble for saying it wrong because of my dialect down here in the South. You know, we have to be careful, because we all try to do organic, and organic is great, but the problem is, I almost advise people today to use commercial fertilizer rather than lots of manures, because of the simple fact of the chemicals that's in it that's going to destroy your plants. I mean, I hate to do that, but it's one of the things here at Deep South Homestead, since I got burnt on using manure, even though it was my manure off of my animals. I had fed hay that was toxic, didn't know it. I don't use my animal manure anymore. I pile it up in a pile, and I am planting stuff on it to try to break it down of any disease or any toxic herbicides that might be in it. I'll test it occasionally to see if it's fit to use anymore. But guys, that's sad. They have fixed it so that we cannot hardly organically grow anything anymore. You know, people's always telling us, well, you could spray this or you could spray that. It's an organic spray. I don't care if it's organic or not. I don't want it on my place. I don't want to spray nothing. I might use a little dish soap for aphids or something like that, but anything other than that, I'm not using it. I'm just not going to do it, because we plant in heavy, early, quick, between insect cycles, so that we can have food. As soon as we get what we want out of it, we pull it up. I don't care if it's in good shape or not. We just pull it up before the insects get it, or before the diseases get it. Get it out of there. Go put it in a pile in the woods out here and let it break down for years and years. Guys, this is what it takes to live off the land. First of all, is the right mentality, and understanding that living off our land is not like going to a grocery store. We can't just grow what we want when we want it. I like pineapples. I can only grow pineapples in the spring and summer here. Once that happens, I got to move them to the greenhouse and try to keep them warm throughout the winter. Things that, English peas. I love English peas. I've got a 3-week opportunity here in the Deep South to grow English peas and produce them. I've got to try to figure that weather out to the point where when they start putting those blooms on and making peas, I've got about 3 weeks. And the powdery mildew will move in, the blights will move in, the heat will move in, and it will kill them. There's nothing I can do about it. I've tried everything. It just doesn't work. But then we have some things like sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes I can plant, and I really, once I plow them a couple times and fertilize them, I don't have to worry about them anymore. All the way till the end of, close to the beginning of fall, I can go in and harvest them, and unless the rats have gotten into them or the deers eat the tops off of them, I usually will make a very decent crop of sweet potatoes. So there's things like that that is really a blessing here in the Deep South, like the sugar cane. We have the video on that, talking about how sustainable it is. It was one of my 6 sustainable foods in one of my videos that I've done about being able to be sustainable in the Deep South. We love it because it makes our sweetener for us. I eat sugarcane syrup every day of my life. And guys, things like corn, all these other things, there's a window of opportunity. You got to get it in that window of opportunity. If you don't, you're not going to have it. And if you don't preserve it right, you're still not going to have it. You can't just have corn in December if you don't prepare for it in the summer months. I mean, there's certain things like that. This is what I'm talking about. Our homesteads are not a grocery store. We've got to get that mentality. We have to eat in season. Our Heavenly Father, I think, intended for us to do that, because if you stop and think about it, there's only certain foods that grow in certain times of the year, and those are the foods that our body needs to maintain good health and good strength through those times of the year. I mean, you take things like your kales and your Brussels sprouts and lettuces and all your leafy vegetables, your cabbages and things to this nature, your collards and things. They all grow in the cool weather. because that's what our body needs in the cool weather to be able to stay healthy and to fight off colds and sicknesses and stuff like that. We have to take into account that God designed our system here on the earth so that we can have what we need for the right time of the year and the right weather that our body will face, and the heat and different things. So, guys, I guess this is probably the question that I deal with the most is literally living off the land and realizing that our homesteads are not grocery stores. We can't just have what we want when we want it at any given time, unless we're diligent and we prepare and we can and we stock up all during the summer months so that we have during the winter months. This is probably, I'm going to say it's probably going to be one of the biggest failures that homesteaders will probably face if an LCE happens, is the simple fact that they didn't prepare right. They didn't stock up right. They're going to learn to do without whenever that time comes because they didn't prepare. They'll probably go through, if they survive, they'll probably go through periods of their, a few year period maybe, where it takes them a while to learn how to do stuff and get back on track with being able to provide what they like when they like. And by that time, usually your tastes will have changed, your eating habits will have changed, and you'll be completely different at that point. So keep in mind, guys, that's what today's Porch Time is really all about. It's just a simple fact. We have to understand the vegetables. We have to understand our crops. We have to understand when they pollinate, how they pollinate, what plant is a great companion to them, what plant is a disease deterrent for them, what plant is a insect deterrent for them to plant with them. Because if an LCE happens and we have to be able to not have any chemicals or anything like that to be able to spray them, or like a lot of us are used to doing, you better learn your weeds, your beneficial weeds, you better learn your beneficial insects, you better learn how to plant and when to plant if you're going to be able to be sustainable throughout the year on your homestead, and to be able to have everything that you want to be able to have when you want to be able to have it. Because you remember, your home and your homestead is not a grocery store unless you have prepared. Now, Wanda and I, our place is like a grocery store. We have an underground facility of food. We can go down there and we can pick what food we want any time of the year because we have stored it up during the months when it was productive. You know, we can through the winter just like we do during the summer. We don't stop because there's plants that grow in the wintertime that need to be canned so that we have them in the summertime because they won't grow in the summer. So it's vice versa. We just flip-flop constantly. A lot of people go, well, I don't can until the wintertime because I don't want to heat my house up. We can almost every month out of the year. It's just what life is all about. If you're going to survive, you're going to have to learn how to do it. Yes, my unit, I have to turn my AC on in the house. We try not to turn it on no more than we absolutely have to. But when it gets to be 100 and something degrees, like it's been here lately, 103 degree heat index yesterday, today is set to be almost the same. We have got to be able to do, and the only way we can is to turn the AC on, because we have got to can. We can't just let stuff sit and not can it, because if we do, we run the risk of losing it. Or if the power goes out, we have a deep freeze that's full of food, then we run the risk of losing all that food. And guys, we just don't want to risk that. So, learn your plants, prepare. You know, do the best you can do with what you have. and pray that the good Lord is good to you should an LCE happen. And guys, remember, the Homestead is not a grocery store unless you stock up and provide for yourself. Thank you guys from Deep South Homestead.